and also Romy.
Hello, everyone. Derek, why don't you kick us off?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Yep, sure thing, Romy. Okay, thanks everyone for joining this evening. We know it's a Friday evening, so maybe some of you are enjoying your TGIF. But okay, so to give a short introduction of what we'll be doing today, our learning topic for today will be self-discovery and career planning. And with us, we have a very distinguished guest. So we have Romy with us. She's the founder and chief impact officer of SUTW Impact Consulting, which also stands for Smiling Up the World. So that's a very positive name right there. And it's a training consultancy that works closely with universities and corporations to develop young millennial adults, ranging from ages 18 to 35. So without further ado, I think I will let Romy start with a short sharing that she has prepared. Romy, please.
All right, thank you. So I'm just gonna share my screen. Just give me a little while. I pull up my PowerPoint. All right, can everybody see it, Derek? Everyone can see this?
Yep, it's visible.
Yes? Okay,
yes.
Perfect. Okay, so we have 30 minutes together for this, but I'm not gonna use all of it for a one-way sharing because I very much want to be able to answer your questions. So I'll do my best to distill this quick sharing in 10 to 15 minutes, and then we'll leave the rest of the time for main room Q&A before we go into our breakout rooms. All right, and so because COVID, right, it's all about disruption and adaptability. Today, I've chosen to share based on imagery and metaphors. So let's go with our first one. I would like you to meet a friend of mine. She or he is called Ems. Okay, can everybody see Ems? Derek, can you see Ems?
Yep.
All right, so if you guys look at it really closely, I don't know if you can tell what it is. It looks like a kind of a soft toy. It has fangs, it has horns that looks like socks. It has a heart-shaped patch at each side of it. Why I'm showing you my friend Ems is because actually Ems was given to me at a very dark time of my life. So some years ago when I was already working, because I've been working for my 13th year now, when I was already working, I entered a really dark patch of my life. And at that point in my life, I actually didn't want to see anybody. I was essentially holding myself up at home, almost like quarantine, but self-imposed. None of my friends could reach through to me, so they actually dropped off a care package. And in that care package, which had paintings, which had a book, which had letters, there was also this little fella here, right? And along with it came a little letter from a friend that's usually not very romantic, right? And this friend actually said, I don't know what you're going through right now, but you know, sometimes the monsters look a lot bigger when they're in the dark and in the shadows, but when you take them out, perhaps they're not so big and scary after all, and maybe sometimes they can even be cute. I share that with you because I think a lot of us are going through some really difficult times right now. Maybe some of our own norms may have been challenged, our old comfort zones may have been stretched and pushed, and as a result, we're feeling unprecedented anxiety. Right? Some of us may also already be in that dark place. But every time I go into a dark place, I look at Ems and I remind myself that if not for Ems, I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't have had the courage and clarity to be where I am today, right? So I just wanted to set the stage going into the sharing, which is that, yes, it's a scary time, but find what anchors you and also understand that not all storms come to disrupt your life. Some actually come to clear the way. Some actually come to clear the way. So with that in mind, let's jump straight in. Right, that's the quote that I just shared. Let's jump straight in. So let me share with you when I was a kid, right? Because I'm actually not that young. I'm almost mid-30s now. When I was a kid, we didn't have Netflix, we didn't have YouTube, we didn't even have the internet when I was growing up for most of the years. So my dad and my mom would buy me video cassettes, and one of them was this, 10万个为什么, right? So 10,000 whys. And I share this because, you know, a lot of people, they ask me, hey, RM or Romy, why do you dare to come out and start your own consultancy? How do you know what you wanted to do for your career? And the answer to that is I collected data points along the way. Right now, we always talk about data science right now. What do I mean by collecting data points along the way? What I mean is career planning and self-discovery needs to start from yourself, from inside out. So whether you're studying right now and you're going through internships, or maybe you have already started a career. I recently had a mentee come to me and say, I just started a career or an internship, literally in his first week of it. How do I know whether to convert it at the end of it? Because he's a junior, he's in his summer after his 3rd year, going into his 4th year, I said, okay, let's collect some data points along the way. While you're doing your internship, I want you to get curious. Get curious about different parts of the job scope that are not just yours. Start asking really good questions, right? Besides that, go outside of your immediate department to other divisions, other departments within that larger organization, strike up coffee chats with people, chat with them. Now it's virtual, right? But that doesn't stop you from reaching out and asking them, hey, what's it like to work in your role? What is the boss like? What's the culture like in your team, right? What's the part of this job and this team that you love the most, that you don't like the most? And as you collect data points about yourself along the way, data is one, right? But data is just facts. We need to convert that into meaningful insights. So first is have a system for yourself to collect data points. The more organized ones amongst us, you might have a journal, right? Where you have very disciplined in penning down maybe 3 things that you really enjoyed from the day and 3 things that drained you, right? In your little journal, for the more spontaneous ones amongst us, you might only note it down when something big strikes you. I want you to maybe get into the habit of asking yourself questions such as, when was the last time I got into a flow state where I literally lost track of time? When was the last time something came quite easily to me? And actually everybody from my family, to my close friends, to my professors, to my classmates, to my project mates, to my aunties, uncles, cousins, they all said, hey, Samantha, you did a wonderful job. You know, every time you want someone to diffuse tension, we'll come to you. Or, hey, Ben, you know, I know that anytime I need really precise, concise analysis, you're the go-to man. I want you to start taking note of patterns that emerge from the data points, both the good patterns as well as the negative ones, because even the negative insights are really instructional. For me, for example, I'll just very quickly share my journey. I've been working about 12, 13 years now. When I graduated, it was at a similar time as many of you now. I graduated at the height of the global financial crisis in 2009. At that time, people were rescinding offers. For the whole of my senior year, I interviewed everywhere, got through the final stages, but nobody was offering anything, right? Very much like it is now. And so long story short, I graduated from the States. I secured a job with a government agency here in Singapore. So I went from government to a really large major listed company for my second job. Then I went into private sector offshore marine. Then I went into a non-profit sector before coming out to do this. Now you have to understand that for somebody that had I got scholarships that were unbonded. First to the UK for my IB, equivalent of A-levels, then to Brown, which is an Ivy League school for my university, again on another international scholarship without bonds. So and then all my peers, they're on a certain corporate trajectory, right? So then when I came out 4 years ago to start being a trainer, a host, a coach, an MC, a moderator, I had not my own friends, but people from the outside say, why are you doing this? You went to all these schools, you are a corporate high flyer, why are you doing this? I mean, and it was not from a very kind perspective that they were saying it. But you know what? I was very thankful because I collected enough data points. And every time people ask me these things or students come and ask me, how did you know? How did you know when to come out? How did you know what to do? How did you know what to specialize in? I said, I collected data points simply about what I enjoyed. When were the times that I came alive? When did I lose track of time? And also, what were the things and the environment and the types of people and the types of work, conversely, that drained me? And after 8, 9 years of working in different contexts, I knew what I loved. I also knew what I was no longer willing to tolerate. And those data points and clarity gave me insights to move on. Right, so which brings me to my next point, which is, as you collect the data points, number 1, you see patterns emerge, number 2, then you start making sense and processing what do these patterns tell me. It becomes insights to help prompt you to take certain guided actions. You identify what we call ikigai, or your raison d'etre, which is your reason for being. So ikigai, right? And I'm going to move on to another metaphor now, which is a plant metaphor. So if you think of yourself as a seed or a plant or a flower, as you will, think of ikigai as after you collect all the data points and you make sense of them, you start to understand what kind of a plant or flower or seed you are. Meaning, right? Our educational system may try to make most of us a rubber tree, right? Or an evergreen, a palm tree, right? You have to be productive in a certain narrow way. But hey, we are all complex, uniquely gifted, created beings, right? So you may be, some of you may be an orchid, some of you may be cactus, some of you may be sunflower, some of you may be tomatoes even. And every single one of this, they are gifted, they are valued, and they are grown in different ways, and they thrive in different conditions. So think of the data points as guiding you to first find out, okay, what kind of a plant or seed am I? Then what kinds of conditions do I need to thrive? And when we think of conditions in the workplace, this means what kinds of, a degree of autonomy, for example, right? I learned for myself that, for example, I thrived really well under laissez-faire bosses that said, I don't really care where you work from, when you work, or even how you work, so long as the work gets done. I really did not like it when bosses, unfortunately, I had a former boss that was really lovely, but was slightly micromanaging in one way. I remember once I was 15 minutes away from my desk because I was having some problems with my stomach. And then a message came in about 15 minutes after I was squatting on the throne, and she said, where are you? You've been away from your desk for 15 minutes. And so personally, I don't really thrive as much under bosses like that. Of course, you have to take things in entirety. But along the way, you get to understand what conditions you thrive in, right? Are you somebody that enjoys challenging variety? Or are you someone that much prefers structure and systems? And that's okay. So that comes with understanding yourself. Then once you understand what seed you are and how much sunlight, nutrients, what conditions, what soil you need, and what frequency, then it brings me to this next metaphor, which is kaika. So what you're seeing right now in front of you, that's actually a sakura bud, right? So sakuras are beautiful, but did you know that even though we always talk about sakura viewing about now, March, April, you know that you can actually view sakura in January? So there's something they call the Sakura Zen-sen or Sakura Qian-xian front line, is where you have a moving front line and it starts from bud. So if you get your data points right and you find out who you are, and then you allow yourself to then bud, right? That's your kaika. That's the initial budding, right? And we all know that when things start to emerge, it's very precarious, it's beautiful, but it's also very delicate because anytime it could be squashed. Which means that now, for example, for myself, after 8 years of working for others, when I first started out my consultancy, less than a year in, I was asked if I wanted to interview for other corporate jobs. Now, in order for you to go from just bud to full bloom, which I will get to, you need to be very intentional like a gardener. You have to prune. You have to say no to good things. You know, there's that phrase, good is the enemy of great. Sometimes you have to say no to some other good things that you can do, but maybe you're not best for doing, okay? So you have to protect and very deliberately protect and funnel yourself so that you can go from kaika into mankai. Mankai or mankai or full bloom, that is the sakura season that people go to watch. And like I said earlier, you know, Okinawa, which is all the way south in the Ryukyu Islands of Japan, that their blooming season, their viewing season for mankai is actually January. Then in Kanto Kansai, which is Tokyo, Osaka, Kyoto, that's March, April. And all the way up north in Hokkaido is actually all the way in May. Why I share this analogy is I want you to not be discouraged. If you are different seeds, even for the same sakura plant, depending on where you are at the stage of your life, you can bloom at different times. And it doesn't mean that you are better or worse, right or wrong. It is just where you are meant to be at that season, right? So sometimes when you're cultivating the soil, you're working really hard, and you're sending out all these resumes and these letters. Of course, you want to course correct if you think you're on the wrong path, but sometimes it's not that you're on the wrong path. It is rather that the timing is not there yet, right? But you're on the right path. You just have to wait for the season, for that bloom to come. So from kaika, be very deliberate to bring it to a mankai, a full bloom. This is mastery, right? And then finally, let's go a bit deeper. Ikigai, right? So ikigai is actually reason for being very interesting, because ikigai is not just, and we'll get to that in the Q&A later, it's not just what you love to do, what you're good at, what the world needs in terms of a problem you're actually solving, and what people are willing to pay you for in order to be sustainable. Now, of course, if you manage to fulfill all four, then you can actually make your calling also a living. But if not, there are many other ways around it, right? So imagine first, collect enough data points, make sense of it, becomes ikigai, you figure out the plant that you are. Then you see the first buds emerging. That's when you really have to focus and protect it. Cultivate and spend more time on that, right? And this next part is really important. People always talk about, oh, you know, is it passion or is it work for money? Guys, life is rarely a dichotomy like that, black, white, yes, no. It's often that, even if it's a passion and calling, I love what I do right now, right? I would call it my calling, but it doesn't mean that it's all just play and no hard work. There is time that's needed. There's also asset han, right? A lot of sweat, blood, and tears that go into it before we can bring it to full mastery or a calling. I just want to leave us all with the last caveat here, which is that much like the sakura, even when you reach full bloom and when you think you have found your mankai calling, it doesn't mean that that's going to be the calling for your entire life, guys. Just like the full bloom can wither after a while and you have to wait for the next season, sometimes this mankai, it might be just for a season. This is why you see people pivoting at different parts of their career, and that's completely okay. Right? So I hope that encourages us. And I wanted to actually, I wanted to leave us with a quote. I think Christine Hanna of the Nightingale, she actually said, if I've learned something in this long life of mine, it is this. In love, we find out who we want to be. In war, we find out who we are. And I think very much so right now, we are both in love or in a period of love and war during COVID. So there's no better time right now than to really rediscover our roots, find out who we are so that we can then move forward into this brave new world to be who we actually want to be. And so with that, I leave you with these thoughts, and I'm happy to entertain any questions here and also later on in the breakout room if you so choose. But of course, we have many distinguished guests here today with us from the media and networking industry, so be sure to check out those rooms if you haven't signed up already as well. I'll also be in one. Keep in touch with me, drop me a message, and we can stay in touch on LinkedIn. But this is it, and I'm going to stop sharing and return the time to Derek for Q&A. So thank you for that.
Okay, thank you, Rome. That was a very beautiful imagery you used in order to share more about the path that we could take in order to bloom fully. So just to recap a bit, the most important things that you mentioned was definitely first thing is for everyone to collect some data points so that we can identify certain patterns in our life, whether they are positive or negative, in order to make sense of these patterns and gain certain insights and understand better our reason for being. And then in addition to that, in order for us to definitely bloom into a beautiful sakura, definitely the right time is necessary, right? So without further ado, I think we can move on to the Q&A session. I'm sure many people, we have about 79 participants today, so that's a lot of people. So I'm sure there are many burning questions for Rome. So if you have any questions, please feel free to just put it in the chat, and then I will ask the questions. And so while we wait for some questions, maybe I can start with one. So you mentioned like timing is very important, right? So actually, I just want to ask, how would one actually determine when the time is actually right?
Yeah, I think a few questions, right? Time is right to do what? So what is it that you're hoping to do? Right. So would you like to clarify the context for that?
So I guess mainly definitely, I guess most people, we are clearly gunning for our first job soon once we graduate, and maybe some people here have just begun on their careers. So perhaps maybe usually one of the things that I think people around my age are concerned about is like career success, because I think that's something that is ingrained in our society as well. So perhaps maybe that would be the what.
No, so is this the right timing to do what? Could you, is this a good timing to succeed in my career? It's not what is the actual question here?
I guess it will be about like, is this the right time to maybe follow my passions, or instead should I get a job that offers me other opportunities, for example, like exposure or better pay?
Yeah, I think that again, so that's quite a common question. And I think we also need to expand into the third option, which is, say you're really passionate about something that you want to start. Can I make something I'm starting, something that also is able to feed me or make it sustainable? Right? And then also ask yourself in this, for example, this first job out of school, what is more important to me? Is it gaining breadth of experience? Is it gaining depth in a particular area? Right? Is it getting certain, for some people, the brand prestige is very important on the resume? Or is it maybe certain skills specifically that I want to gain, whether hard skills or interpersonal skills? Then based on that beginning with the end in mind, then you can say, okay, what's the vehicle to get there? Is the vehicle starting something on my own? Is it by myself? Is it with people? Right? And who are these people? What's the number of people? How experienced should these people be? Right? Or is it joining a corporate sector, but being very intentional about therefore the role, so that you can achieve the goals that you want to get out from that very first job.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always really just being very intentional, beginning with the end in mind. It's not just about landing a job. It's not just about getting paid. Right? It's more. It's all of that, but much more. Right? What do I want to get when I get that job and I finish with that first job and I move on to the next stage of my career? What are the building blocks of my career journey?
All right. Thanks so much for sharing.
Yeah.
I guess we are still waiting on some questions. So besides that, okay, we have one question from Jessica. Thanks,
Right.
Jessica. So she asks, when you actually started your own business, did you kick it off while you were still working in the corporate, or did you go into it full time from the very beginning? And secondly, how do you find mentors along the way?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Jessie. By the way, I know Jessie. She's one of the postgrads that I know. So first question is, when you started your own business, did you kick it off while you're still working in corporate? Well, yes and no, right? So first is, all along, I had always been doing training, mentoring, coaching, maybe not training, but mentoring, coaching, speaking on the side, right? So I always been doing that on the side, just it never crossed my mind to make it a full-time passion. So if you talk about ikigai data points, I already knew that about myself, but maybe the timing wasn't right, or I didn't really have the guts to do it earlier on in my career, for which I'm actually thankful. Right? So no, I did not kick it off officially when I was still working in corporate, partly also because some of the corporates I was working for did have an anti-moonlighting policy. So unlike some companies now, which is a bit more, which are a lot more enlightened, right, Jessie? Some companies do not allow side hustles, even if there's no conflict of interest. So in my case, I only started it after coming out. But the craft and the data points, everything happened way before that. It was ongoing. How did I find mentors along the way? I'll share this story, okay? So even when I was a freshman, I remember I went to a career fair at Brown, and it was January, right? So it was not even during peak season. I was a freshman. Everyone there was junior and senior. People were like, what are you doing there? You're so Asian, you're so on the ball. It didn't matter to me because I just wanted to learn. So there was this alumna who was there. She was working at a top aviation firm, airline at that time. And at the end of it, I went up to her and I said, Christine, thank you so much for that sharing. That was really inspirational, which it was. I was wondering, does the airline have any internships in New York over the summer? And she said, well, we do not have an internship program. But then I said, would you be open to creating one with me? Kudos to her. She said yes. She actually created an internship program for me. Right? So my motto in life is this: you don't ask, you don't get. If you ask, what's the worst that can happen? They say no, you have a bit of a bruised ego. At best, you waste a bit of time approaching them, but nothing is really wasted. So how do you find mentors? Just be really thick-skinned, but also be very humble and respectful while approaching them. So just ask, and also understand that some mentors are there with you to journey for a long time, and some are topical mentors, and that's good. We usually have a portfolio mix of them. I hope that answers your question, Jessie. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Jessie. Oh, Derek, I think you're on mute. Do you want to unmute yourself?
Yeah, apologies for that. Yeah. Thanks so much, Rome, for the sharing, and Jesse for the question. So we do have a few other questions from our participants. So Xavier actually asked that since times are rapidly changing recently, so what are your thoughts on Ikigai during this age of digital disruption? For instance, what if my Ikigai is no longer necessary in the job market?
Yeah. So again, this one requires more probing as to what the person's Ikigai is. But if you're doing Ikigai well, or the way it should be, Ikigai shouldn't be a specific position, shouldn't be a specific industry itself. It should actually be certain skills. So for example, right? Take for example, let's say someone, let's say nowadays, because of robots, right? You, in banks, customer service assistants are probably kind of going out of a job, right? But if you really strip down the position into what are the skills that are needed for an excellent customer service rep, what do you think they are? They're probably going to sound like really good at diffusing tension, placating even irate people, being able to emotionally self-regulate so they don't get triggered as well, being able to retain an unpleasant customer and even convert them into an advocate for them, being able to deal with a wide variety of people. Then you ask yourself, in this new digital world, what kinds of jobs might require this skill set, right? And then find that position that says that needs someone to be so flexible. So for example, it might be, let's say you might need to work with, it could even be, in fact, I've heard this happening in banks already, that these people that formerly were, say, customer service assistants, but were excellent at their job, they now actually work with the data scientists, training the robots and algorithms. So they make their algorithms even more human and even more empathetic, right? And of course, then they also complement, because most of the times the best robots, right, or robo-advisors are not just pure bots. They are complemented by the human aspect. So actually, in a way, these customer service assistants sometimes even get promoted to become relationship managers of a certain kind, right? So a way to think about it is, what are the skills that have allowed me to succeed in my jobs so far? Take away that title, what are the component skills? Then you go and ask yourself, in this new world, what types of jobs out there will need this same type of skills repackaged?
Right, thank you, Romy. Yeah, definitely. I think what you mentioned about like the collection of data points is so applicable in what you just mentioned as well. Yeah. So I think we are running short on time. So we'll move on to the last question for this sharing. So Jie would like to ask that she just graduated with a marketing major. So I think this period was quite a period of uncertainty for most people who recently graduated. So how would you actually suggest someone who has just graduated and looking for a full-time job to collect these data points in order to do self-discovery for his or her career planning? And in addition to that, if he or she has missed on this discovery timing during university, how can they actually continue carrying out this journey?
Okay, so firstly, discovery stops when we die. Okay? So this data points thing is a lifelong journey. It's not just for you to collect data points when you're doing internships or when you're undergrad or postgrad studying and then that's it. No, right? The best ones are always learning more about themselves and who they are as they evolve. So number one. Number two is, how do you collect data points to do self-discovery? It doesn't have to be through internships. It can even be as simple as, for example, right? It could be some of you have taken up new hobbies during this period, right? And you realize that, I've had more time to maybe play the piano, to learn a new craft. Or even for me, I realized that when I was working already, and then I was assigned something on top of my work, which was a case study. I actually had to write 3 case studies, right? And in order to get to the case studies, I had to interview a lot of people. And this was on top of my regular workload. So I remember for 3 weeks, I was working till 3 a.m. But you know what? That was the happiest period of my time in that company. And I asked myself, why? Like, is it that I'm a masochist? Right, that I like working till 3 a.m. I mean, maybe partly that. That's why I'm an entrepreneur today. But jokes aside, I think I asked myself, when was the last time I felt this way? And I realized the last time I felt this way was when I was in university. And I asked myself, why? What are the parallels in this situation? And the parallel was that in university, as during the case study, nobody was really supervising me. No one was micromanaging me. I had full, mostly control of my schedule. I had full reign to kind of interview different people and kind of go as far and deep as I want. I had creative autonomy. And I took that insight later on into my entrepreneurial journey as well. I thought I tried everything, right? Government, huge MNC, private sector, non-government organizations. I loved some, I didn't like some parts of it. Then I asked myself, when was the last time again I felt so happy? And why have I not be able to recreate it in my career journey? And the answer again was university. Why? Autonomy, like full autonomy, which none of the formal work arrangements was able to offer me. And so with that insight, I then used entrepreneurship now as a vehicle for the impact I wanted to create. I never wanted to be an entrepreneur, guys, because my mom herself is an entrepreneur of 32 years. I saw firsthand how difficult it is. So entrepreneurship was kind of not on my radar. In fact, it was probably something I didn't want to embark on. But if that's the means to the end I want, which is the impact, and to do real work without getting involved in games and politics, then okay, I'll take the vehicle so I can do the real work. So it can be long-winded answer to the question, but it really can be as simple as when you're doing your hobbies, when you're doing a project, when you're writing an essay, right? When you're even coaching your niece or nephew or young kids or teaching tuition, are there moments when you went, wow, time has just flown by, I wish I could do this more? Then get curious and dig a bit deeper and ask yourself why. And what are, again, the component parts and the conditions that allow you to feel this way?
All right, thank you, Rome, for the insightful answer. So thanks, Jerry, for the question as well. So I think that's all the time we have for our first part of this learning and networking space. So next we'll be moving on to the networking space, and I'll be passing it over to Rachel soon. So just to end off, Rome, do you actually have any last maybe words that you would like to share to everyone during this period of uncertainty, especially for youths around our age?
I think I would share an insight that many people told me when I was younger, but of course I had to learn it the hard way, which is that life is, you don't have to get everything figured out right now, right? If you take that first step, okay, maybe this is what I would say, take a design thinking approach to your life. When you cast out a POC, a proof of concept, and you take that first step into the market, then you collect, again, data points. Then you learn what works and what doesn't work. You iterate and you pivot from there. And along the way, more new avenues become clearer to you than when you first started out. So in short, just do it, to borrow from Nike. So I'll see some of you guys in the breakout room in a bit. But thank you, Derek, for facilitating. And thank you for all your questions.
Yep. Okay, thanks, guys. Now I'll pass the time back to Rachel.